There's a big change coming to TVs this year, a change that started in 2019 with a particular TV released by TCL, but this year will finally take hold industry-wide with TVs from most major manufacturers. I'm of course talking about mini LEDs, which has the ability to not only really improve the backlighting, but also the overall picture quality of full array local dimming TVs. And today we're talking about what it means and which TVs to look forward to this year. So stick around. Hey guys, it's the Villaman here, home theater enthusiast and lover of all things tech, and on this channel we review, demo and compare the tech that entertains you, and today we're talking about mini LED TVs. So before we get into the new technology, let's talk a bit about the background of LCD TVs and how they actually work. Now, LCD TVs have been using LEDs as their backlight for over a decade now, and people call them LED TVs, some call them LED backlit LCD TVs, but they're all exactly the same thing. Since LCD TVs are transmissive displays, they need a light to illuminate the picture. And the backlight does exactly that. It's one of the many layers that comes together to make the display panel of the TV. In an LCD TV, the backlight sits at the back of the stack of layers, and that shines through other layers before it gets all the way to your eyeballs. So without getting too complex, after the backlight comes the first of two polarizing filters, and that acts just like polarized sunglasses, which only lets through light along a certain plane. In this case, it blocks light coming in on the horizontal plane and lets through light coming in on the vertical plane. Then there is the thin film transistor or TFT layer, which acts as circuitry to control the state of the liquid crystals, whether they are twisted or not. Keep that in mind. So naturally on top of that layer sits the liquid crystal layer, which has very fine crystals which represent the red, green and blue subpixels which make up the overall pixel. Then there's the color filter or the quantum dot filter, which actually adds the red, green and blue color, and they line up precisely with the subpixel structure of the liquid crystal layer. After that layer, then there's another polarizing filter which runs opposite to the one behind the liquid crystal layer and blocks all the light coming in on the vertical plane that the other polarizing filter lets through. Of course, the specifics of all these layers depends on the manufacturer and the type of TVs, but those components I mentioned essentially appear in every LCD display. Now, the liquid crystal layer doesn't actually add any color to the light passing through it from the backlight. Instead, what it actually does is once an electrical charge is applied to liquid crystal representing a specific subpixel using a TFT layer, what it does is essentially twist the light rays to the horizontal plane, then passes through the color filter to add the specific color, and since the light is now on the horizontal plane, it passes through the second polarizing filter, and that's the pixel you actually see that's in the turned on state and creates the overall picture. The TFT layer is what controls how bright or what color the pixel is, or whether it's completely off or what shade it is. Now, when the pixel is off and the backlight zone behind that section of the screen is on, then that's when you'll see blooming from the backlight, which many of us know oh too well. So that's basically how LCD TVs work and how the backlight fits into the overall equation. So the fewer backlights you have, the bigger the area of the screen that's illuminated when each of those backlights turn on, and the more light there is behind pixels that aren't supposed to have any. And of course, the more propensity there is for blooming, and that's where mini LEDs and the changes it brings comes in. As opposed to the traditional LEDs that's been in TVs for the past decade or so, mini LEDs are just that, a mini version. And the mini LEDs are significantly smaller than the ones found on most TVs up to this point. So manufacturers can add a lot more of them in the same amount of space, and more LEDs of course mean more local dimming zones, at least for the most part, and we'll get into that part too. Now, the thing about mini LED backlight systems is that even though they can be comprised of thousands or even tens of thousands of actual mini LEDs, they'll be grouped into and in turn controlled in clusters. So they'll still end up forming only a fraction of the local dimming zones when compared to the number of actual mini LEDs that make up the backlight. So for example, the LG QLED will have up to 30,000 mini LEDs depending on the size of the screen, but that will only make up to 2,500 local dimming zones. Don't get me wrong, that's still a lot, especially compared to what we have now. So that's an improvement in and of itself, but it's still only a fraction of the potential. And that's not unique to LG either, mind you, because other manufacturers have taken the same approach, but that's the biggest issue that I hope will be fixed as the technology matures. Because right now, even though having more mini LEDs in the backlight means we'll see smaller local dimming zones in TVs, which means more zones and resulting less blooming, it still won't be as much as it could be until all the mini LEDs can be treated like their own independent zones, like bigger traditional LEDs currently are. That way we can have mini LED TVs with tens of thousands of local dimming zones, which would be an even bigger step forward. Sure, it won't be like an OLED TV or a micro LED display for that matter, which are emissive technologies and essentially have millions of local dimming zones, since each pixel can be turned on and off independently of the other, but I think it would make for a great alternative, especially for a transmissive TV. And we can't forget about the pricing factor either. Having that added complexity to the local dimming algorithm and circuitry will no doubt lead to higher costs and a higher price as a result for consumers. But you have to wonder, just how much though, right? I am sure there are some of us willing to pay the extra price for a non-compromise experience. There always is. Some of you may not be aware, but mini LED TVs aren't entirely new. TCL was actually the first manufacturer to launch a consumer mini LED TV in 2019 with their 8 series TVs. I reviewed that TV back then and even compared it to the Sony AAG OLED TV and thought that it had really great potential at the time, and it's only improved since then with firmware updates. But in 2021, the floodgates are all the way open. This year will mark one of the biggest industry shifts in LCD technology since the days that LEDs replaced the old CCFL backlights in LCDs. 2021 will see the launch of mini LED TVs from most of the major manufacturers, like LG with their QLED TVs, Samsung with their Neo QLEDs, and TCL with their 6 series TVs, which also had a mini LED backlight last year too, by the way. But curiously enough, there will be none from Sony. Really, Sony? I don't know, maybe they have another strategy, but if past mini LED TVs are any indicator, then the ones this year will have better contrast and most likely increased brightness performance than comparable TVs from 2020. Not to mention new designs from thinner screens, so it's a pretty exciting time. All these manufacturers will have at least an 8K and large screen variant, meaning 80+ inches of their mini LED TV, so there should be a lot of options when it comes to size and features. Price, of course, is another story entirely. We'll have to wait and see just what the launch prices of these TVs will be, but we'll definitely be testing, demoing, comparing, and reviewing these TVs like we've always done. So if you're new to the channel, then make sure to subscribe for more coverage of these new mini LED TVs and OLED TVs and pretty much all the other 2021 TVs. Don't forget to check out the merch store for awesome home theater t-shirts like this one and more if you want to help support the channel so we can bring you more content like this. Let me know in the comments what TVs you're looking forward to most in 2021, and if you'd like to see more of these explainer type videos, don't forget to like the video if you liked it, and of course subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this has been your friend and neighborhood Villaman saying be safe and peace.